And I love the idea of gut health because what I realized, it had very little to do with food and everything to do with how we think, the stresses that we were holding, the anxiety that we had. And through helping them rebalance their body around the stresses that they were having, their bloating would disappear, their digestive health would improve. And it lit me up more than I've ever seen before, seeing these people walk away.
Hello, I'm John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And, for all our guests watching us from around the world, British Columbia is a beautiful, beautiful province. It's a large province. Most of the cities here that people likely will relate to is either Vancouver or Victoria. To get a mental picture of where we are about 500 miles north of Vancouver or 800 kilometers. And that puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. So today we have a very special guest. Her name is Jennifer McCormack, and she is joining us from Australia. And Jennifer, very interesting entrepreneur, coach, very interesting topics. Jennifer helps women on a global scale for business, taking their minds and energy to a whole next level. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and then obviously where are you in Australia? It's, as you already said, it's 31 degrees. That's absolutely beautiful. For us, today it's probably around -1, -2 maybe. It snowed a bit today. 2 weeks ago it was 45 below zero. So, but we are heading to spring gradually.
Well, number one, thank you for having me on here, John. I cannot imagine what 45 below zero would even be like. We don't have anything like that here.
No, so you are in Australia. What
I'm
part
in
of Australia?
So I'm in Melbourne, so down south, east of Melbourne,
Yeah,
down the southeast of Australia.
which is the
So
capital?
it's not the capital, actually. Our
Oh,
capital is Canberra. So in
oh
the
yes,
next state up in New South Wales, it's not even Sydney. It's further inland.
right.
That we have a little capital, the ACT.
Okay.
So I'm down south. So we have normally quite a cold climate. But yes, at the moment we in summer have quite warm days. 31 is today. I think tomorrow will be 36 degrees Celsius.
Woo.
So it will be a little bit warm for us, stay inside sort of weather.
Right. Global warming concerns to you in Australia as it is around the rest of the world?
I think so, absolutely. And I think here, we do get hot summers, but we've always had hot summers. We have a big bushfire season, and that's about now. But we've always had that as well. So it's not a new thing for us. But what we find now in particular is that it's not just February, March where bushfire season is. Sometimes it seems to start in November, which is extremely unusual.
Yeah.
So we're getting this sporadic sort of climate change that we haven't had before.
Yeah. The obviously British Columbia and Canada, where we are located, we are in the lumber business, and so we're very familiar with the forest. And because of global warming and the changes in the weather patterns that we have, not enough moisture. Again, we are already looking towards likely a summer where we will see lots of forest fires. So we're all concerned about that as we go forward. And as you did, starts earlier, more intense, and lasts longer. So it's a major concern to us.
Yeah,
So,
and I think
yeah, go ahead,
and I
Jenny.
think a lot of us here in Australia, definitely because we're used to it in some frame of mind. There's a lot of backburning that gets done in the off season to try and reduce, obviously, the fires that
Yeah.
happen in fire season. But yeah, it's still a big concern.
Yeah, sure it is. So give us a bit of your background. The obviously I've read your bio, and you grew up as one of five siblings, I believe, and then in not a very affluent setting, so it was a bit of a challenge to say the least likely. So tell us a bit about your background.
My bracket, yeah. So I'm one of five children. So I'm number three of number five, the nice in the
Right.
middle. And my mum didn't work. My fathers both struggled quite a lot. I've got a stepdad and my mum divorced when I was 7. So we didn't have a lot growing up, um, but we had enough. And I think it's only when I look back now and seeing what I have now and what I can provide for my children that I realise just how little we had. I did notice my mother struggle a lot financially. Um, and so this really set the framework for what I thought was possible and what I thought wasn't possible for myself growing up. Being in that sort of setting, you're not exposed to much. We were never a very social family. We didn't go on holidays at all because we literally couldn't afford it. So you learn to make do with what you've got and you become very resourceful. And so growing up, and I had this idea in my mind during high school that I wanted to be a fashion designer. And for me, that just sounded so far out. But I got down this track because we didn't have a lot of money. I used to make my own clothes a lot. My mum sewed when we were kids. She would sew the same dress for myself and my elder sister because we're 2 years apart. And so I had got this love for creating clothes. In my spare time, I would draw outfits, and every now and then when we could afford fabric, I would go and make something. So coming into year 11 and 12, my senior school, I'm like, I wonder if this is possible. I had a really great teacher in high school that taught me how to make patterns. And one thing I was good at was mathematics. That was a strength of mine. So it really flowed into pattern making really well. There's a lot of shapes, there's a lot of construction and all that sort of stuff. And even that, I didn't know how I was going to get into uni. I didn't know what marks I needed. It just wasn't a common thing where I was living that it was a career to pursue. It was a dream.
So you said you were good at pattern. What is that? I didn't
So
quite
pattern
understand.
making, it's when you look at a garment, you have to have a pattern to follow. So
Okay,
each
okay,
individual piece is a pattern piece.
okay. So that's the technicality, the word to it. Yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's the technical framework behind garment construction.
Yeah,
So
makes
that's one
sense.
thing I learned to be very good at. Um, so then we just happened to move down to Melbourne from Brisbane, and I was exposed to a totally different world. Up in Brisbane, there wasn't this high fashion that there is in Melbourne. It was just like this whole world opened up to me, different university courses, and I'm like, you know what? I think we can do this. So I did a couple of interviews and I absolutely loved it. Did my 3 years of study, got a job in my last year of university working with New Balance because sport was my thing. So when the entrance paper came along that New Balance is looking for a graduate, it was automatically handed to me. And I'm like, oh, this would be amazing. So halfway through my last year, I got accepted into New Balance as their junior designer. And that
What i- what
started off
is
my
what is New Balance, Jennifer?
New Balance is a global sporting brand.
Okay,
So
okay,
along with the Nikes and Adidas, New Balance is just up there the same. Back in those days, it was a lot smaller company. So we're talking 25 years ago.
Is it now global?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
But based out of the US,
okay.
and their Australian subsidiary was a lot smaller, is a lot bigger now.
Right, right.
So that was my first job, and I absolutely loved fashion. If anyone told me that I would do something else, I would like, no, it's just not possible. This is my world. I'm thriving in it. I'm so good at it.
It's your passion, right?
It was so much my passion. But what I found, John, is I found two things. One, I went through that career very unconscious. And because I was also very good at what I did, I would get promotions and pay rises. And without thinking about it, you just accept what's put in front of you. And one day I'm sitting there and I'm managing 14 staff and I have a $14 million portfolio to look after. And I'm not designing it all. I'm looking after budgets, I'm looking after staff, overseeing production at a high
Managing.
level.
Yeah.
I'm managing everything. I'm
Correct.
doing sales.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm so far away from what I wanted to do. The
Right.
creative part of my job is disappeared.
Yeah.
The
Financially
industry,
rewarding, maybe, but not
financially
satisfactory.
beautifully rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Job status, perfect.
Yeah.
But I wasn't doing what I came into the industry to do.
Right.
And it just
You
happened to be what
you did that for about 20 years?
I did that for about 20 years.
That's a
Yes,
long
I did.
time, Jennifer.
It is a long time because I loved it
Yeah. Yeah.
until I didn't, right? So one thing that introduced me to this world that I'm in now is when I was at New Balance one day, I was driving home from work and I was in a car accident. I was in a 5-car pileup. I was car number 4 and I ended up spraining my spine. And I had to take about 2 weeks off work because I was in a lot of pain. And I was working with a practitioner at the time just for my general health. And he said to me, go and see this woman. She's a kinesiologist. Don't ask what she does. She'll help you with what you're going through. And I'm like, okay, I've never heard of this word before, but I trust this guy. So I went along. I told her I had a car accident, sprained my spine, told her what was happening. She laid me down on the table. She did her thing. And after an hour, John, I got up off that table with no pain. And I looked at her and I went, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. I've been in debilitating pain for 2 weeks and you get rid of it all in an hour. From that day, I went to see her probably once a month to help me through different things in life, from mental stuff, from stress in my career. And one day she said to me, you know you can do this. And I laughed at her. And I went, sounds amazing, but I love my job. Like, you could not take me out of the fashion industry. But after having my first child, your brain starts to look at the world differently. And I started looking at my lifestyle differently, my career differently, my health differently. And that's when I realized, and it sounds funny, that there's more to life than work. And how can I make everything that little bit better? And that's I went after my second child. I decided to study kinesiology. I went, you know what, let's study it. I don't know where it's going to go, but let's study. And it was even through that year of studying that I just saw miraculous things happen. Things like the eczema that I'd had since my childhood disappear in front of my eyes in an hour. You know, in my case studies that I did during that time, you know, I saw 13, 14-year-old boys that weren't growing grow like 5 centimeters in no time at all. You know, I saw people's gut health improve so quickly when they had been on years of elimination diets and digestive issues. I saw migraines disappear when this one gentleman had had them every week for 15 years. And I'm like, there's something here that is more interesting to me than putting clothes on people. So I started down this route and I started purely in health, and I loved the idea of gut health. And I love the idea of gut health because what I realized, it had very little to do with food and everything to do with how we think, the stresses that we were holding, the anxiety that we had. And through helping them rebalance their body around the stresses that they were having, their bloating would disappear, their digestive health would improve. And it lit me up more than I've ever seen before, seeing these people walk away with their health so much more improved when they had been trying mainstream medicine, different diets, everything that they could to get themselves back on track. Well, one day I was working with this one particular client, and we noticed that every time we worked on her gut health, and her business started to improve. And my mind goes, is it a coincidence? Is it not? So with kinesiology, what we do, we bring up energy from the body and we ask the body, we tell the body, this is the problem that it's having. This is the solution we're looking for. So if it's bloating, the problem is we're bloating. The solution is we don't want to bloat. And we're like, what if we change that around? What if we tell the body that you currently have 12 clients a week, but you want 15? Because what we know, the subconscious mind, the energy that holds in the body, is smarter than we are cognitively. And that when we connect in with this energy, it tells us what we need to rebalance within our mind, within our body, to help us get to where we want to go. Now, kinesiology is never used for this, but we're like, let's give it a go. And it just seemed to work. So from then, my next trial was this business coach. And she came to me, she goes, Jennifer, my business is in disarray. I owe people money. I feel like I need to go get a part-time job to help myself survive. I'm borrowing just to feed and pay the rent at the moment. I'm like, okay, tell me how much you want. For this month, I think it was April at the time, how much you need. She goes, I need 10,000. That's to help me pay people back and get me back on my feet. I'm like, okay. But what I liked about her, she was a business strategist. She knew the implementation that she needed to do to help her get the results. It currently wasn't working. So we worked on the energy and the mindset to align her with the $10,000. So we worked together every week for 4 weeks. We worked together on beliefs around what business meant to her compared to a part-time job. Because the reality for her was her parents saw business as risky and a part-time job or even a job as security. So it was really important for her to reframe that within her mind, that business isn't necessarily risky, because we know that if our body and our brain sees something as a risk, it will deter us from going there. So we had to reframe that. We had to teach her again how to look after herself. We had to remove other emotions from her physical body that were stored there that wasn't helping her get into alignment with where she wanted to go. At the end of the month, we did the check-in of the numbers. And she said to me, Jennifer, I have earned $9,997 this month from nothing in the past 3 months. I'm like, oh my God, this actually works. So what interested me more, like I love helping people get money, like that's exciting. But what I have enjoyed more over the years, John, is how that money has created opportunities for people. And for this particular client, it was she could keep following her dream, following her passion, and helping other people through her business. But then there's the other things like, I saw a big rise in COVID, our COVID period with all the lockdowns, of
Right.
a lot of relationship breakdowns and a lot of women going through abusive relationships.
Right.
So when it was helping women build their business and creating financial stability, for themselves to create opportunities so they could leave toxic relationships. Like, that's why I do what I do. And that lights me up more than, yeah, we can get $10,000 a month, we can get $50,000 a month, and just looking at money for money.
Right.
It's like, what is that money doing for you?
So on the foundation of it lies kinesiology.
On the
So
foundation, it lies kinesiology because it's all about the energy underneath it. So when I
right,
look at kinesiology, it's you working from the energy up to the cognitive level.
right,
So when we shift the energy, it shifts it as a cellular level and then shifts it in the cognitive level.
okay,
The reason I brought hypnotherapy into it is that there's a lot of people that are stuck in our mind,
right,
right? They're stuck in the belief systems that they were, integrated in as a child. So
right.
it really helps with hypnotherapy. I'm working from the cognitive level down to the energetic level.
So if you get a client or if you have a client, the first thing with them is to explore their background, where they are and where they want to go. Would that
What is
be
important is that we have tangible goals.
right?
Number one. You'd be surprised with the amount of people that come to me and go, I want financial freedom, I want to be happy, I want a joyful life. While that's brilliant, it's not a goal because that is based on how we feel in the moment.
Right.
Right? We can feel great today and we can feel free. And tomorrow we may have hurdles in our world and feel restricted.
Yeah.
So when we start to create tangible goals, and this is why I like either in business, it's either a financial goal or how many people we want in our world. Right? Do you want to work with 5 people? Do you want to work with 100 people? What is it? So then we have a tangible goal to work with because most people don't have a realistic, tangible goal that they can cognitively get behind and their body and their mind goes, I can do that. They might have a wishful goal that on a soul level, it actually feels too far away for them.
Right.
And that's when, if we think it's too far away, it'll always be too far away. So creating those steps, sometimes we don't have to dig too far back because when we have where we are and where we want to be, connecting into the body and seeing what the blocks are, the barriers to get there, it'll bring up the past that we need to work with because some of the past is really beneficial for us. So yes, I know for me that I come from a past that is quite poor. It helped me become resilient and it helped me become resourceful, right? So there are definitely both sides to everything. But I also know for me, I've had to work through it is possible to earn 5K a month. It is possible to earn 10K a month because previously that just seemed so far out of reach. Is it even possible? I've never seen anything like that before. So it's the body will tell us where we need to go. And most of the time, when the client sits in front of you, they will be able to tell you, I know what it is that's holding me back right now because I can feel it. I know I don't feel good enough. I know this is my issue. And then that's the first presenting thing to work on.
So hypnosis is on understanding, like in your case, obviously of your background, which was challenging, puts you at an advantage to, I would think, substantial amount of people. That that I always say it's much harder to go from prosperity to something to the alternative. It's much more difficult than it is from the other side to reasonable comfort, whatever that may be. And then a lot of times people are their own worst enemies because they've convinced themselves in some form or fashion that their dreams, and we all must have dreams, are just not realistic and likely will maintain to be a dream. And every time they express it, as happens a lot of times, then people say, oh no, that will never work, and I wouldn't do that. So there's a lot of negative around you, and if you allow that to become serious in the sense that you take direction from that, then it becomes difficult. So
Yeah.
just a little bit of background about myself is I was born in 1940, so I'm in my 84th year, and I was born in Holland, actually northeastern Holland during the Second World War, and things were quite challenging, and
Yeah.
and then saw far too much that we should not have seen, especially in that part of Holland, and resulting in PTSD and the inner child issues, which took me till about 50 years before I got counseling on the inner child. Very emotional,
Yeah.
actually, and then dreamed about. We were liberated by the Canadian Army in April the 12th, 1945, and it left such an impression on me that I always knew that I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I was trying to go when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me, and then was drafted into the Dutch Air Force, and then I did go when I was 23, and I had this other dream that I wanted to build a lumber mill, because my dad managed, not his company, but a small lumber mill, and my grandfather was a master carpenter. And then I was not very successful academically. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times, and became a laborer in Holland at the age of 13. And then young people in particular are not very nice a lot of times. All the friends that I used to have in grade 7 and around that area went to college and university, and I was a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was not looked at very favorable, and then in Holland it used to go this way, that if you want a career and at some point get married and buy a house, then then it always, in terms of getting a career and make advances there, then it was always a question, okay, that sounds good, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas. So I had to kind of start, in my mind, over from the beginning, and I wanted to do it starting with nothing, no money. I could speak a language, didn't know a soul, and didn't have a job, and I left Holland with $150. Flew into Montreal, traveled across Canada, ended up in Vancouver, because that's British Columbia is where all the trees is, and that's where I hoped to build my lumber mill. And fortunately, there was a German fellow, and I could speak some German, so I talked to him, told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George, that's boomtown. It's they're building sawmills, pulp mills, and all those other that's where the opportunities are. So I came here to Prince George. At the Greyhound station, took 14 hours to drive, and I can still see virtually the Greyhound station close by here. I've been here now nearly 60 years, and I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and didn't know a soul, didn't have a job, and didn't have. I counted my money in my pocket at least 3 times. And I had $25.47, and not quite enough to build a lumber mill from, actually. But what I did have lots of is attitude. No matter how challenging today is, I will swear it's a better day tomorrow, and that's always been my attitude right from the time that I was young. The second one is I had passion. And once I develop the passion that I want to do, I give it 150% in all the things that I do. And then the other underlying fundamental to me was work ethic. I work harder than anybody, and what will result is success. And I still do that today. even at 84, I've been quite successful. You have all kinds of companies, but that's not what this is about. But success became a part of my life, and and I had the dreams. But the foundation for me a lot of times was the challenges that I started with, how I developed it, and then as I started here from the bottom up, then within 2 years I was a superintendent of one of the largest lumber mills here. Within 2.5 years, I already had part ownership in a lumber mill, and today, we have 8 or 10 different companies, and so things have gone very, very well. So that's kind of my background. And then the other
I
part
love
that I wanted to just share with you is that it took me. I was not very outgoing, and and then I always was struggling with even already having all kinds of companies. I always kind of felt that I had that sense of failure that had happened in
Mm.
Holland never kind of left me. And then one day I walked into a store here, a bookstore, and I opened up a book, and the book title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, and it was about
Mm.
ADHD. And I said, "Oh my God, that's me." You familiar with ADHD? Yes. And
Yeah.
and so and so I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, and because I was ashamed of it, and there was a stigma attached to it. Obviously not today, but then there was, and it kind of opened the door for my background. And then the other part was that I became very active in interacting with people more than I did before. It created that confidence, because everybody
Mm.
said, "Oh, you're so successful, you've done so many with your company," but I didn't quite feel that way. But then the other part that I did is that people said, "You have such an interesting life, you should write a book about it." And so I tried to do that. Writing books is not easy. So I tried to do that for about 20 years, start, stop, start, stop. And then at, approaching 84, that 5, 6 years ago, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I started to write a book. And the title I did write a book, quite successful actually, Against All Odds. And
Mm.
it's not about how successful John is. It's all about all the ups and downs all along the way. And so that has been quite successful. And then the other part is the more I found out about ADHD, and then finding that initially looked at Google and all the other research that I did, the more I found out about it is that probably 8% of the population have I call it now, the benefit of ADHD. When
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I had an interview with the fellow that wrote the book Against All, Driven to Distraction, Dr. Halliwell. I podcasted him actually, and he wrote that book in 1993. I bought it January 1997, 32 years after I was here. And so we had a very interesting discussion, and saying
Mm.
that I believe that probably more than 20% of the population have ADHD. And he said, "No, John, I believe it's 25%." And I agree with him. The
Mm.
other interesting part about it is that uh, probably of the successful, and the operative here is successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, probably I said to Dr. Halliwell, probably 50% of those groups, the successful ones, ADHD. He said, no, 75%. And I agree with them. So I
Yeah.
say, I call it a superpower. And so
100%.
I said I have to write a book about it. So I did that. This one here, quite popular, ADHD Unlocked. And so that
Love that.
was the second book that I wrote. And so and obviously a lot of people say to me, "How do you do all the things that you do? You manage 8 to 10 companies. I'm a public speaker, do a lot of on the in demand, and then obviously do a lot of podcasting, and then I wrote 4 books. The other one, so many people don't like what they are doing, and you come to
Very
mind
much.
in a way, and so a lot of times I talk to young. I know a lot of people that don't like their jobs. I said change. And because if you don't like it, then you go home, you take it with you. People will see that you're not happy, and so I say change. Then I talk to a lot of young people, colleges, universities, and other places, and so I always ask them, "What you going to do for a career?" And most of them say, "I don't know." I said, "Well, the more you find out beforehand, you want to be a welder, a truck driver, a lawyer, an accountant, or even a CEO, whatever you want to do, talk to those people because they are all happy to talk, interact with people that are interested in knowing from a career perspective what they're doing, what are the benefits, and the negatives and positives." So I wrote about that thought as well, finding your passion, living the dream. And
Yes.
so, and a fair question would be for me, because I've always had the dream of going to Canada. I always had the dream to build my lumber mill, and I had always had the dream to become at least satisfied that at the time that I left grade 7 at 13, became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, that I was just as smart as everybody else. No better than, but no worse than either. I was just
Yeah.
slightly different. And that's what I'm saying,
Well,
even about ADHD, even for people that are not familiar with ADHD, it is so you cannot avoid to be interactive with them. And so I say, read the book, not only my book, but also Dr. Halliwell's or other ones on the topic, because what you will find is that they are extremely interesting, but they tend to be slightly different. And they are very successful in business, usually.
yes, it's interesting you say that because my youngest son, he's 10 years old now, and he was recently diagnosed with dyslexia. So a little bit different to ADHD and ADD, but very similar as well.
No question.
And so he's obviously going through junior school at the moment, and it's navigating him through a system that's not designed for him. And so, how do you
Exactly.
teach a child to win through a system that's designed for them to, well, let's face it, it's designed for them to fail. So
Yeah.
it's teaching them that it's a superpower, but it's not a superpower in that quadrant,
No.
and that's okay.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, first give him confidence that he is just as good as everybody else. Like for me,
Yes,
I ADHD, a classic case, dyslexia to a certain extent as well, and a lot of successful people are benefit from that or are affected by that in some other ways. They have to understand first and foremost, and that's what I do. And when I speak to groups or I talk to individuals, there's virtually not a day that goes by that I do not interact with people either that have it directly themselves or in their family. And it's so rewarding in terms of saying that it's a superpower. There's no question about that. Hence, I wrote a book
absolutely.
about it. The other book that I wrote is that I think was very important is that I'm very much into health and fitness, and
Mm,
and obviously I'm going to be 84 this year, and so, and I'm going to stay. It's not about the number; it's quality of life, and so
100%.
I'm writing this book is living young, dying old, and I'm going to be 120. So
So, what perspective are you writing that book from, John? Out of interest.
on the one living young, dying old, from what perspective?
Yes.
Yeah, saying that obviously I'm fit, I'm active in all the things that I do. My wife is vegan. I'm probably 80-20. And then
Mhm.
the other part, as you can see on the book, is that I'm active in the gym. Everybody gets a warning, right? So your
Mm.
body is extremely forgiving. It will be forgiving in a lot of ways until you abuse it, and then obviously other things are going to happen, especially in the last decade of anyone's life. I saw an
Mm.
article written by a doc that had looked at studies of about 100,000 people that had biopsies after they died. Not a single
Mm.
one of them died of old age. Not one.
Yeah.
And
I
so
wouldn't.
the perspective was that I was affected by diverticulitis. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with it. It's a breach
Yeah.
in the colon in particular, but mine had a rupture, and so that means that the toxins go through your system and starts attacking the organs. You have about 48 hours, and if you don't get it then done, then it could kill you. And so I came
Mm.
about that close, and then after that, I was the same as everybody else, right? So saying that at year end, we always say, "I'm okay." Then we make what are we going to do next year? Okay, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, and then I'm going to go to the gym, and then you do that you buy a membership, you do that for 2 weeks, and you can find 100,000 reasons as to why you're far too busy and you cannot do that. So, but then I knew I have to take diet more serious, and then
Mm.
and my wife obviously was a big help there already, and then I have to go to the gym. And so I started, that was in 2009, going to the gym. And after about going there visit a trainer, to me that's important because my life is appointments mainly, and so
Yep.
and I will always follow up on the appointment. So after I was doing that for about 6 or 7 years, somebody came up to us, my trainer and say, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me?" And then I said, "Why not?" So I
Why
started
not?
then to look at, because it gives me a goal, started to get ready for competition, and then I qualified in Northern BC bodybuilding and physique. That qualified me for the provincials, and about the same there. And then I qualified for the nationals in Canada and the Arnolds, and so it brought me
Mm.
to the top. And then obviously COVID came, and then now again I'm training for the last 6 months and getting ready for 2025, and I'm 85, and again trying to get to the nationals, and I'm sure I will, and to the Arnolds. And so the first thing that's important is that it makes me very attentive in terms of diet. We
Yes.
have mainly plant-based diets. The I don't like prepared foods of any
Yep.
sort, or the so if I go to a grocery store, mainly go through the outside, where they have most of the healthy stuff. And then and then obviously I don't drink, I don't do all those obvious things, and I'm very conscientious of what we do in terms of being preemptive and being aware
Yeah.
of it, right?
You have to. And I think the beauty that you get to have is when you have a goal where you know your boundaries that you need to have around it, it makes actually it's what I call, creating that self-trust for yourself, where you have those boundaries in place because your goal is so clear. And you know you're not going to drink. You know you're not going to stay out late if you've got an early gym session. You know how to refine your diet. And you don't have to really look externally for, am I doing the right thing? Should I do the right thing? It's like it's so known because your goal is so clear.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
How
And
often do you train?
well, right now I go about 3 or 4 times a week, mainly 3 times a week. And the sooner I get to competition, I usually go 4 or 5 times. So anywhere between 4, 5, 10 to up to as much as 10 hours a week, the closer I get to competition, I go more. And but I stay always fit, and I've been doing that for the last 15 years, actually, since 2009, and
I love
doing
that.
and then there have been short interruptions because of COVID, where everything was closed, or some other things that happen. Is that but once your body will adapt to being healthy. Your muscle, your body fitness will be remain there, and
Mm.
if you don't use chemicals to do it, and obviously I don't, so and I enjoy it, and then it's the most precious thing to have, really, is that to stay fit physically,
Why,
mentally. I didn't get that.
why do you say for you? Oh, why do you say for you that it's the most important thing for you?
Because that allows me to do all the things that I would like to do, and
Mm.
is being fit and feeling healthy. And I see so many people that already at a young age relative to me, either at 40 or
Mm.
50, is saying, no, I can't do that. I don't want to do that, or not eating healthy, or abusing their bodies. And with what I usually say to people is, you don't have to become an Olympian or do what I do. I like it. But even a half an hour a day or 20 minutes of a day, stay healthy, do something that keeps you fit, will make a huge
Mm.
difference in your life. Staying away from processed foods as much as possible and focusing on natural food, in particular plant-based or natural food of some description, will help you. And then getting sleep 7 to 8 hours a day is healthy, and all those things that are so well known, if you practice it,
Mm.
it will result in feeling better, especially as you approach the last decade of your life.
Do you think, John, that a lot of people don't focus on this because they don't understand why they should?
Yeah, maybe. And that likely is the case because so few are motivated, because it's so critically important, right? Because to have
Mm.
that fitness and the interest in doing things and staying active, rather than
Mm.
saying, well, I'm too old, or I'm this or that, or I can't do this, or and to have that. My foundation is attitude. I seldom know people that know me. I usually am always positive.
Yeah.
Passion. I get excited about the things that I do, my companies, and they go through ups and downs. Obviously, writing books. I love writing books. I'm working on two right now: Living Young, Dying Old, and another book about the forest industry. I love podcasting, interacting with people from all around the world. Australia, you're the first one that we have talked to. And last week I had somebody from Peru, one from Greece, and from all around the world. And and then every day to me is special.
Yeah. Yes, because you've got a purpose to everything that you do in your world. And I think
Correct.
what you were saying earlier is a lot of people lack that purpose. We do a job because we have to earn, not because we enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we exercise because it's what we think we should do, not because we know it's healthy for us. Or
Yeah.
people drink because it's what everyone does. So why wouldn't I do it?
Right.
But sitting down and creating that purpose and direction for ourselves, it gives us that trajectory on and the why behind it. I love that book. It's slipped my mind now, where he says, we can withstand any how if we know our why.
Yeah.
It's that resilience that keeps you going when you know why you're doing it. If you
Correct.
want to live to 120, you know that you need to look after your physical body because it's going to travel you there.
Exactly. It's very
I had
forgiving, but you can only abuse it for so long.
to Yeah. It's interesting. I had this conversation with this gentleman a couple of years ago, and he had been smoking since he was about 14, 15, and he was now in his 40s. And he actually didn't understand for himself why he should quit. So when he looks about around his own personal health, he can do most things that normal people can do. Some things he can't do ultra well. If he goes and plays a game of football, yeah, he's not the best afterwards, but he can get through it. But for him, it was like, I actually don't know life without it. So I don't know what optimum health feels like. I don't
Yeah,
know if it's possible because I've never experienced it. And I think this is it's a big issue for a lot of people, and having that my world can be different from what I'm currently experiencing. And it's to, can I get my head in the game enough to know that there is that difference and how to create it, and that it's actually worth going for compared to what I'm experiencing now. So
exactly.
there's a lot of mental hurdles that we have to get through sometime to have a different result in our life. And I think this is what we go through a lot when working with, women in business. It's, yes, you've come from poverty. Yes, you've come from a world where, yes, you might have had enough, but your dad controlled everything. So you don't feel as a woman that you have the right to earn or that you're good managing, but it can be different.
Yeah,
And it's to show them that there is a starting point, and that little bit by little bit, gym session by gym session, healthy plate by healthy plate, that you can get to a different place,
exactly.
and that they have control along the way. I think a lot of people think that it's out of their control, but along every step of the way, you have control. You don't have to eat healthy to the point where you don't like anything that you're eating. There's some beautiful, enjoyable, healthy food.
And
It
and
may be
that
different.
Yeah, and just like you said, Jennifer, is that it doesn't have to not taste like medicine. It can be perfectly healthy, and I don't even think about it in terms of anything other than that, and do as much of the natural that in plant-based. Not in all cases, but that be fairly selective as to what we eat, and now, the other thing that you may find interesting is that, we have two places, one down south, and I'm in Prince George for the week. And then usually Friday afternoons, I go to our place down south from my wife. We have a farm, and we have 7 horses and dogs, and,
Mm.
and ride English dressage. And, but, I do all the shopping for her, and she is vegan, so, and and it's not a question of that she tells, "Oh, get this." That I know exactly what she needs and what she does like. So it's a lifestyle, and then be enjoying it. It's not a question of saying, "Oh, we must do this because it's not enjoyable, but we must heat this or do." It's just the opposite, because going to the gym for me, I love it, going to the gym. If I spend an hour and a half there, it goes by very, very quickly, and or an
Yes,
hour, whatever time you want to spend, and and then the same, when you have a healthy diet, and then feeling, that you feel healthy is an amazing feeling, really, if you appreciate it. I know so many people that are in situations just totally the opposite.
absolutely. And I think what's important, as you said, it's you need to have fun doing it your way while you're doing it. So if the gym as self is not your thing, what form of movement is your thing?
Exactly.
And create that love for how you move and what you want to do to move. For me,
Exactly.
I'm not a gym person, but I love Pilates. Like, I could
Good.
do Pilates all day if my body would allow me to do it. So
Right.
that is my thing. And everyone gets to explore what their thing is and create that passion for their purpose.
Yeah.
And it's the same with food. It's like I know I'm extremely lucky my husband is a chef. So he
You're
actually
lucky.
taught me a lot about creating beautiful dishes and beautiful dishes out of nothing as well.
Right.
From my background that I've had, my dishes were very bland, extremely simple, and he would never eat them when I first started dating him. But he opened my world to, I didn't know you could have, 15 different salads. And I'm like, this is so interesting. He would create, yes, the common Greek salad and the lettuce salad, but then there's the quinoa salads and the freekeh salads and all this in between. I'm like,
Exactly.
this is an amazing world of food.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's to find your passion spot in amongst every subject
Exactly.
and not
Now
just
the
doing things
now
when you need to do it.
yeah, now the other part, like obviously, that at 83 and then in Holland, the medical system has changed a lot. When I grew up in Holland, if my mother didn't feel well or my dad didn't feel well, but in a lot of cases they called the doc and he would stop by the house and just making sure we were okay. Well, that's not how it works today. It's in fact we have a shortage of people in the medical system, and where a lot of people here, and not only here but in a lot of places, have no doc or a doctor or that kind of service available. And then with all the information going on, I believe that people have the ability to become much more proactive in terms of their own personal well-being and health.
Yeah.
No different than in a way what you did, when you got hurt in the car accident and ended
Mm.
up crippling along until you got exposure to somebody, kinesiologist, I believe. I don't even know what it is, even not today, but it is out of the normal, but we know the medical system,
Right.
and we have to try to be more proactive in terms of how do we remain to be healthy and stay healthy and be preemptive. And
Yeah.
in our medical system, with all due respect, is not necessarily preemptive. It is more reacting to situations.
Yeah. And look, there are very valid reasons to go into that system when you need it. But you're right. Like I look back when I was a teenager, and this was especially for you as you were growing up, and even more, that we didn't have access to information like we do today.
Exactly.
And the amount of information at our fingertips, there's almost no excuse to not take your own health into your own hands. That doesn't mean like go and diagnose yourself. But
No,
when it
no.
comes to how do I become a better version of me? How do I tweak my diet for me? And while some people thrive on being a vegan, some people don't. And it's how well am I connected to my body? So
Yeah,
I know what foods agree with me and what doesn't,
exactly.
right? So yeah, and it's diet, it's food, it's lifestyle, it's consumption of information.
Yeah,
I look at not only social media but the whole internet especially when it comes to this entrepreneurial world. There's a lot of brilliant pieces of information, but there's also the perspective that we get to take on all that information. Like we can see all these healthy people, and then do we go on the perspective of, oh, that lights me up and inspires me to be better than what I am now? Or, because the other perspective is that we can go, oh, I'm not that, so, and I can never be that. So I'm just happy to suffer down here, right?
right.
Because that's the thing that I'm interested to know from you, John, which is from the background that you had growing up, you could have very easily fall into a self-victim mode.
Correct.
But why didn't you? What gave you that different perspective to have that drive and passion?
I always knew, right from the beginning, I had a dream of going to the land of my heroes, Canada. That
Mm.
gave me a dream that always stayed with me. The other part, when I was not so successful in the schooling, I loved lumber and I loved working with my hands, and
Mm.
I became good at it. So now I knew where I was going to go at some point. I knew the profession that I wanted to go into it. And then
Mm.
I was always entrepreneurial. Even when I was 10 or 12 years old, I already was selling things, collecting bottles and delivering papers, anything for me to make money. So I was entrepreneurial, and then I had the dreams, and then when I came here, I was driven by, I can be just as good as everybody else, although it took me a while to get that confidence totally within me. But I was always had the foundation, attitude, passion, work ethic. No matter what happened, even when I was younger, I was always the, the guy that always had a good humor, even in the worst of circumstances. No matter
Yeah.
what I was doing, I gave it all that I got, and I worked hard right from the time that I was a kid. And I, even today, still, if it is going to the gym or my companies, that I'm still want to grow the companies and dream about things that we can do and should do. I'm still very proud of it, and the same I feel about the podcasting and all the things that we do, right? So it is that
Yeah.
underlying foundation of attitude, passion, work ethic.
Yeah. And you probably had that instilled from your parents on some level too.
Yes, and they were good examples for me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Jennifer, it was delightful and a privilege to have this discussion all the way from Australia with Canada and British Columbia. So it was a pleasure and a privilege to have you on my podcast.
Thank you, John, for having me. It's been a privilege to be on it, and it's so great to have that good chat with you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. You take care.
You too.
Bye bye.